Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are going to be drawing Doctor Doom, and I'm also going to be talking about some perspective stuff, perspective and posing and how that affects, how perspective affects posing and all that kind of stuff, and angles. We're going to be doing this at a low angle, so yeah, this is something which I don't normally do because doing a character perspective, so to speak, makes life a lot harder. Which is something which I don't normally do for that explicit purpose, because generally speaking, doing something like that sort of dominates the whole thing. So unless that is the explicit point of the drawing, like it is today, I generally don't do it because it can obscure a lot of other things. So, for example, it changes how the poses look because of the angle. The angle is always very important in that sense. So I generally sort of avoid going for any extreme angles because that can make those things a little bit difficult. But yeah. Anyways, I will roll the intro and then I'll show you what I have because it's going to take a little bit to get through it. So yeah, anyways, I'll do that. So yeah, this is what we got. As I said, low angle. It's in the name of the file, low angle. But yeah, so realistically speaking, design-wise, this is a Doctor Doom, which is not particularly different in any way. He's still got his little gun holster. I put it on the left instead of the right. I don't know, I see it vary sometimes, so I don't know which side it's supposed to be on. I just put it on the left because I think it looks better that way. Plus, it's not in my way. If it was over here, it'd sort of be in the way a little bit. I just added this sort of to the main sort of robe piece. I added this sort of seam. That's not going to infer any sort of different shades of green. I think it's all still going to be the one shade of green. Actually, no, the cape is going to be a slightly darker shade, and then the core robe will be a slightly brighter shade. And then silver is obviously all the one color, and then the brown is also all the one color. I also think this buckle will be gold because that will be a nice little bit of contrast in that way. So yeah, perspective. So this is obviously a low angle, meaning the head is small, the legs are big. And obviously because the arms are out, they're also big. Yeah, but also I made him quite beefy. Oh yeah, a change which I made to the design is that he's got these big shoulder pads. That's sort of the only real difference. Because I feel like it makes him look big and huge, which is a sort of thing which I feel like Doctor Doom would probably be conscious of because he's a very vain character. It sort of makes sense that he would want to make himself look bigger. Hence the sort of shoulder pads, and that also enhances the drapery of the cape because it makes it much bigger, and then it obviously also drapes out in these big directions so that it has this kind of energy of where he's like, yeah, that sort of really overblown, sort of over the top, looking down on you sort of energy to the picture here. Part of the thought process here as well was that I wanted this to enhance the sort of, I wanted it to sort of really give off the sort of dictator look, which I think this does through a lot of those things. Something which is interesting in a sort of accidental way is that it sort of looks like he's smiling with his eyes, which wasn't the idea, but I suppose it sort of makes sense. It was originally his eyes were supposed to have like a condescending look to them, but it sort of looks more like he's like smiling with his eyes, which I suppose works in that same sense that he could be like looking down and laughing or something like that. I am going to be doing a little bit of background stuff for this. I'll put a little bit of like a castle over here and then probably a moon behind that, but that's stuff which actually will be very difficult because I'm not going to be detailing the castle. I'll just have it be entirely black. I'll just do it like that, and then I'll throw the moon behind it, and then just do some like smoke or something up along this way, just so that there's still something filling the sky around there. I was going to maybe put some lightning, but I don't think I need it. I think it won't look as good if there's lightning. I'll probably put the moon like quite high up so that it's only like this sort of circle up here, because I don't actually want the moon to be touching him in any way, because I'll use the moon as my rim light. Would be the idea that the rim light would be going along like this, and then you'd be seeing that little bit of rim light off of the moon. That way I also don't have to do very much of a rim light. I basically have to do it up here and then along there, and that's it, pretty much. There wouldn't have to be very much at all. So, yeah. because of the low angle, that's also going to infer a difference in our lighting. So whenever it comes to the shading, which is obviously, that's a later problem, stuff like the bottom of the nose will be lit lightly, and then the bridge of the nose will be dark. So as to sort of show the low angle lighting. Be the same thing, you'd be seeing dark under the eyes and then light above the eyes. Which is another important part of doing stuff like that. And then, yeah, like just along the forehead, a little bit of light along the forehead that then the sort of dissipates by the top of it. And then the chin obviously being lit low, and then the top of the chin being dark. Stuff like that, very simple stuff, top of the lip being dark. Those sorts of things, or the sort of filtramarium being dark. I believe that's the right term. But, yeah. And then obviously the arms here be light and then dark along the top, and then obviously the shoulders be dark. So these are obviously just sort of things that these aren't necessarily things that would always be on your mind whenever you're thinking about doing this sort of shading. You'd be thinking of like, oh, I'll just sort of it's sort of just the obvious thing in your mind of where it's like, okay, yeah, then whenever the light is low, how is that hitting the character? It's hitting them from, if the light is here, then this is lit, this is lit, this is lit, and then this is lit. But everything else should be dark so as to intensify that lighting. And that also has a sort of sinister quality to it whenever the lighting is low and whenever it's heavy, which is what it's going to be here. It's going to be low, heavy, and intense. So therefore it will look very sinister and menacing. And yeah, then obviously our rim light will do a lot just to sort of shape it against the dark background, and especially because our lighting is going to be more intense here as opposed to last time where it was pretty light, or pretty soft lighting in the Supergirl one we did last week. That was pretty soft overall. But yeah, design wise, not really any changes, just this sort of these little lines coming down. I put some more like bolting along the arms and stuff like that. His mask has a bit of a different shape to it than normal. It's got this sort of skull-ish look to it now. It's got the eyes have a sort of like skull shape. Same with the sort of indented jaw. These are bits which I've sort of taken from the Ultimate Alliance games. That's a lot of where some of this has come from. A lot of these design elements, like the shoulder pads, that comes from Ultimate Alliance 3, and then the rest of the sort of design of the body and stuff like that, that comes from, that some of that is just inferred. Like a lot of this stuff, I don't think I've seen a lot of the stuff that sort of really emphasizes the sort of muscle and all that in many places, so I just sort of did that bits myself. I still added the sort of rings as being like the bending parts of the armor. There's still these sort of like rings that go around so as to show where it's bending and folding. But yeah, and you're not seeing much of the legs there. But there's an odd consistency to the drawings we're going to be doing for the next little while, and there's a lot of skirts going on. So with Dr. Doom, it's because he's got this sort of tunic that obviously has a skirt at the bottom of it. Last time we had Supergirl, and she has a skirt. And the next time we've also got another skirt. And then I believe after that... No, actually after that we don't have a skirt, so... there's just a lot of skirts. Not all skirts in this sort of current little chunk of these that I'm doing. But anyways, yeah, I think I've gone over everything. Not really making any huge, like, sweeping changes here. It's just sort of stuff like the, again, like the elements of the perspective. Obviously, head small, arms big because they're in front, legs big because they're the furthest thing forward. And there's this obvious through line of where this is the say your beginning point of the perspective, and then everything sort of like comes down. Whoops, everything sort of just comes down like that. From there, from this one point, it all sort of emerges from there and moves down. I could put in a grid just to show that off, but that will probably lag the hell out of my Photoshop, so I'll probably just leave it with what I just described, because I think that's good enough. But anyways, yeah, you'll sort of see more of that as I'm sort of going through and redrawing these bits. You'll sort of see what I mean whenever I'm talking about those bits of perspective. You'll see it sort of emerging as I do these bits and pieces of it as I go along, with sort of bits like the sort of cape sort of folding up and covering parts of the hood and all this stuff. So yeah. Anyways, I will do these details and then I'll be back to do the colors. At which point, obviously, I'll be going through the colors. So yeah, anyways, I'll probably do the background during that section as well. So yeah, anyways, I will do this, and then I will be back for that. So yeah, anyways. Alright, that is our details done. So, you might have seen a lot of those perspective things that I was talking about, i.e. small head, big arms, big legs, as being sort of, obviously a big part of the perspective element. And also I sort of maybe I altered the cape a little bit so that it drapes more in, so that the perspective is a little bit more pronounced of it coming in, thin at the top, big at the bottom. Again, that's sort of the nature of these things. Now, I have to sort of think about what I'm going to do with all of these colors, because I need to have... yeah, so I'm going to make the belt buckle gold, I think. The belt itself is going to be brown. Silver, green. I need 2 shades of green, one for the cape, one for the tunic. So... yeah. So, oh, God, excuse me. I also need to do a bit of a background, so I need to have a moon, I need to have a castle. A castle should be pretty easy. I can mostly do it the same way I do the buildings, where I just do a little bit of a... get the polyagonal lasso, or something like that, and then just do... just sort of make it up like that. Add a few points and stuff like that, so that it looks more like a castle rather than just buildings. And then slap a moon up here somewhere. And then maybe throw some clouds around the place or some smoke or something just building up along here, so that sort of emphasizes our sort of our sort of color scheme. So I'm probably going to go for very green is the sort of thought process I've got here, because I don't know what else I'll really do with it. Because there's going to be a lot of green on show here anyway, so the color palette I go for has to be very green in order for this to sort of work really at all. I'm going to need to open up some reference just to see what I'm doing. So, right, yeah. Largely Doctor Doom's green is a very, it's a sort of more, it's slightly more on the blue scale than the yellow scale, but I'll probably find some sort of a halfway house of where the cape will probably be more on the blue scale, and then the tunic will probably be slightly more on the yellow scale. So that will probably work for us on those sort of lines. Yeah, I'm just thinking about that now. Okay, so, right. In terms of our colors, I don't think there's an enormous amount I need to introduce here. I'll just do the background and stuff like that here as well. Background largely won't be too difficult, because I can just do a lot of that stuff with a few of my tools. I can sort of speed that stuff up. And there'll be more background stuff I'll have to do later with like smoke and stuff like this. So yeah, that'll be a later problem to deal with. Yeah. So, just thinking. I don't think there's anything more I need to discuss. Those details, sort of, again, I feel like I got across everything I needed to. I edited in all those bolts and everything. I sort of segmented out more of the armor. It was the same thing with the knees here. I segmented it out a little bit more, so there's this knee piece, and then the elbows sort of have these separate lines going through them, so there's like a bit of an elbow bend, and then there's obviously this sort of double seam, I suppose, this sort of double bending around the sort of middle of the arm, and then obviously at the top of the arm as it goes from the shoulder down, it's the triple bend, and then that's you could presume that it's the same thing with the legs over the top of the legs, the triple bend, but as it's going down the leg, it's just the double bend. I nearly forgot to include the little joints that he has. So he's got these two little circular pieces on the sides of his arms. It's a little hard to see here. The color will sort of clear that up. I also included his like little circular knuckle pieces. That's a part of the older design, which isn't in a lot of the newer designs, but I chose to include it. As well, he's got this sort of back piece on the back of his palm. So yeah, that's sort of all those little elements covered. I don't think there's an enormous amount. Something I forgot. Where should this be in terms of the arm? That goes in, so it should be about there-ish. Right. So yeah, that's what I was forgetting to do. Was there should be this little extra piece on the arm there. I actually need to thin that out. I think it's a little too thick, that line. But realistically, I think that's everything I needed to go over for the just before I start this these colors. But yeah, what else is there? Yeah, there's the background, all that stuff, and I'll do that in this section. Not all of it, obviously. There's any of the stuff which involves paintbrushes I'll do during the painted shading section, which is the next section. So, without further ado, I think I'll just carry on and I'll do this colouring. So yeah, once I've done this, I'll be back to do the painted shading, and then, that will be nearing the end by that point. So yeah, anyways, I'll do this, and then I'll continue. Okay, that's our colours done, so now it is time for the painted shading. I also did the background, and I did all this castle stuff here. It's pretty simple. It's not like too crazy or detailed, but I did do a thing which you probably saw me doing, which was adding in these little notches along the top of this, just to make it look like castle topping, little bits of making it look more like battlements, so that it looks a little more accurate to a castle. Now this pointed cap on this part is a little bit slanted. It's not quite right, but it's good enough. I'm not going to exactly go in and start tinkering with them as it's not really all that important. Just so long as you get the impression of it, I think that's enough. Now, I chose to make the background bluer because the color tones I'm going to be using are going to be somewhat blue. The green is still going to be in there. We're going to be going for something a little bit bluer because that might make it look a little bit more interesting. I think it might work. We'll see. Because I obviously used the two different tones of green, but they're not all that different. They're mostly similar. They're pretty similar. They're pretty similar tones of green. They're not all that different. The dark one is only slightly darker and slightly more, slightly further on the blue side than the main green. The main green is slightly, well, it's a pretty mid. It's a very mid-tone sort of green. Whereas, yeah, obviously the darker one is slightly more blue. Obviously the silver also skews a little bit blue, so that's sort of where my thought process of making things a little bit more blue came in, was the fact that a lot of this stuff does have a bit of blue in it. During this section I'm also going to be polishing up the background a little bit, because I'm going to add a little bit of, I think maybe a greenish kind of smoke along the sides, along the side here coming up. Maybe some clouds, and then also just sort of smoke up along the castle, just to sort of blur it along a little bit. Because I feel like that will look a little bit more interesting if that's how it looks. But yeah, is that everything I needed to go through? I think it is. I don't want to dawdle too much longer because I'm tired. So, and it's very warm even still, even though it's not as warm as it was last time. It's still warm. So yeah, I want to try and get through this. And I don't think there's a huge amount I need to introduce here. Really, I mentioned at the beginning all the lighting stuff. So our lighting's going to be coming from below. So stuff like the bottom of the nose will be lit, but then the bridge of the nose will be dark, forehead slightly lit, top of the head dark. Stuff like that. So again, like along the arm here will be dark, along the arm down here be light. And then down this arm will also be light, but kind of darker at the top. Light coming up here, then obviously dark at the top, dark at the top. That's sort of the general idea of what we're going for here, is dark at the top, light at the bottom, which is obviously sort of opposite how I'd normally do it, and then having the white rim light as coming from the moon. So yeah, I think we don't need to go too much into detail about that. You'll sort of see what I mean as I'm doing it. It will be more obvious as I'm going. I don't normally do sort of low angle lighting. I don't normally do low angles really at all, so you'll be seeing a little bit more of that here. I've done it before, not often though. So again, as I say, you'll see what I mean as I'm doing it, but I think I'm going to go for some bluer tones for our lighting here. We'll see. We'll see what I manage, we'll see what I go for, and you'll see it about now. So yeah, I'll carry on. And I'll be back to do the detailed shading in the light line, and that'll basically be it. So yeah. Alright, that's the painted shading done and all the other bits along with that, I added some of that greenish smoke just so the background has a bit more of a green hue to it now, as opposed to its very blue sort of tone that it had before. So everything has a little bit more green going on now, which I think works a little bit nicer. And as you can see, the tones that I've set up for my detailed shading are suitably green. Granted, the darker color is definitely a blue, but that'll be fine. And obviously I'm going to have a white light line, but that's obviously after all this. As you can see what I meant whenever I was saying obviously low angle, high contrast. All the lighter parts are at the bottom, all the darker parts are at the top. So something which I'm going to be doing here is just to make my life easier. I'm really only going to be using these colors on the parts where it should be the most defined. For example, I'm only really gonna I'm not going to be going crazy with the shading here. I'm going to be shading the parts that should be the darkest and the lightest respectively, so that I'm not having to go and do a huge amount of work here, because I do sort of want to get through this because it's very warm in here and I don't want to be in here for much longer. So yeah, if I can get through this quickly, I will. So in the interest of that, that is the sort of idea here, of where I'm going to shade the kind of the highest contrast bits for the sake of getting through this, because realistically speaking, I didn't really get the chance to add much like sheen to the silver, which there logically should be a little bit. But the problem is that whenever I'm using a lighter color for the lighter parts of this, is I can't really go like super light to make it to give it that sheen. It's not really gonna come across. So that's sort of the problem here, is that if I go any lighter, it's really not going to come across as sheen so much as it is just going to be muddied, slightly lighter than what I've already used as my lightest. Excuse me. Anyways, I think I'm just going to carry on, do this detailed shading and light line, and then I'll wrap up, do my gradient maps and all that stuff. So I've got a color palette in mind, and I'll try and apply that whenever we get to that point. So yeah, anyways, I'll do this, and then I'll be back. So yeah. Alright, that's our detailed shading and light line done. So, now it is time for our gradient maps. I'm going to need to pull up my reference for my shading, or for my gradient map. I'm curious, because who knows, this might not pan out quite the way I was envisioning. Oh, I could have... Hang on. Just delete that. Delete the entire thing. Because just make my life easier rather than having to flip all this stuff. Just do it like this. Right, okay, now... Okay, it's fine this time. Right, so what do we want as our darkest? Our darkest is going to be a very dark blue. About here-ish. Maybe even slightly purpley. Put it about there. So we're already on track. How many tones is this? This is 5. 3 of them are blue, so we'll see. This should be a very light green. Put it about here, I think. Maybe make it slightly yellower. I shouldn't be too picky about this, probably. Right, okay, that's slightly it's a little bit brighter than what we've got. And what I'm looking at in front of me here. My middle tone is a blue, so this is the next tone. This is a pretty deep blue that I'm looking at here. Put it about there. Put it about there. This looks about right. Again, I'm trying to avoid being too picky about this, about how I do this. So this one's a little bit more of an aqua color. Right, okay, this one should be about here. Here-ish. Maybe more like there. No, you know what? Put it there. Bring it to there. You know, to about here-ish. Yeah, that looks about right. This tone, it should be, that's definitely green, this one. This one should be a bit darker green, actually. Right, how's that looking? It does get a bit dark here, which is interesting. Maybe brighten that up a tiny bit, bring it to about there. It's still a little too dark, I think. Maybe just make it now. No, it does need to be kind of dark, this one, I think. Okay, that should be fine. Right, okay, let's see on their overlay. Okay, it doesn't actually kill the green, surprisingly. And you know, I actually like this. I think this works. It's not exactly the same as the color reference I used. I've altered that slightly. But yeah, you know what, this works. Keep it vivid, keep it to be about 70%. How does that look with and without? It's maybe a little too blue. I think maybe I'll tone it down a tiny bit, make it 60. Yeah, 60 is a little bit more in keeping, I think. I don't think it needs to be too intense like that. Okay. Right, now duplicate that. Have a look at that on luminosity. Bring that down to 25%. We want this to be kind of dark. So how does that look below versus above? Below is definitely darker. I think that's what we want more of. Right, okay, put this next one to be a color burn. This is obviously going to be a lot darker. But color burn is always 5%. 5% on color burn is always enough. Right, okay, that's everything on. That's everything off. It's definitely darker. That moon is has a lot more of a green tone to it now, which works. That's kind of what I want, actually. I wanted the moon especially to have a bit more of a green tone to it once the gradient maps were done, so that works for me. Right now, next I gotta do my texture. So as soon as I can find that, it's getting harder and harder to find this thing because there's more and more files in this bloody folder now. Maybe I should move it somewhere where it's more easily accessible. That would be a thought, wouldn't it? But, you know, I don't have foresight like that, so we'll just carry on as we were. So 5%. Let's see. I don't think I want this to be too crazy. We want it to be more intense than it was last time. 25% is probably good. Let me have a look at this on the monitor in front of me. Right, okay, let's try 25%. 25% is good. This has a very, I feel like maybe if there was like bats flying out behind him, this would have more of like a Halloween vibe to it, but obviously it doesn't. Let's have a look at this on our character. Let's see how it's looking on his face, because obviously that's where things are getting a little bit more compact. It barely affects his face, actually, so I suppose that's fine. It lightens things up over here a little bit. Yeah, you know what? I'm pretty happy with that. That was this was a good showing, I think. I think things have all worked out quite nicely here. I'm pretty happy with that. Tell you what, I'm actually going to make a tiny adjustment to the light line while we're here, because I've still got my white and didn't remove that. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just do that, because this is catching my eye here as a thing which I think needs a little bit more light on it. It's just this crease of the cape. Yeah, okay, that looks a little bit nicer now. So switch that back. Okay. Yeah, okay, I'm happy with that. I was considering doing allowing the rim light to go around this side, but given that the moon is all the way over, it's very much on that side of him. You wouldn't really be, you'd maybe see a thin light line around this edge, but you'd definitely be seeing it more here. And obviously because the shoulder pad is moving outside of the cape, I decided to give that a rim light, and then by proxy sort of slowly taper the rim light down along this side of him, but then have it dissipate as the soft light sort of would take over here. Because as you can see, the soft light down here is more, it takes more precedence, and then it moves up at this sort of angle. The soft light has a bit of a weird angle to it where things are darker at this edge, but then they sort of get lighter as it goes along. So yeah, things do have a bit of a an odd sort of movement to them because of the angle that the light is at. But yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that. This has actually been a shorter one. Again, this is 3.5 hours, except I didn't lose any footage this time, so that's good. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I think I managed to get a good showing of the sort of angles and perspective stuff. I didn't really explain much of it, to be perfectly honest, but I feel like it's more self-explanatory, so I think it makes more sense whenever you're seeing me do it. Whenever you're seeing it individually in bits. But yes, I suppose the sort of general thing is, because obviously the castle here doesn't have any perspective on it because it's supposed to be far back, therefore you wouldn't really be seeing much perspective being applied to it. The angle wouldn't be quite so obvious if it's that far back. You wouldn't be seeing much sort of angling to it in that way. So yeah, basically the idea whenever you're doing a perspective of anything is to maybe start from a point, especially if you're working with it on a character, start from a point and then just have, and this isn't what I did, I used reference for this, but if I were to start from scratch, what I would do would be I would have a point, say up here, and then that is where everything is at its smallest. Is at that point, that is where everything is at its smallest, and then there'd be a series of lines which would taper out from that, and obviously at the furthest end of those lines is where things are at their biggest. So you then just sort of figure it out as you're going, where it's like, okay, well in the middle here things should be sort of maybe not quite at their biggest, they should be a little bit medium. But as things are reaching this far out, things should be at their biggest. And obviously all the way up here, smallest. So what's at the smallest here is his head. The top of his head specifically kind of comes in. Not actually that much in, but it does come in a tiny bit. And again, obviously it sort of works as like a triangle, is the way that you're working here. Especially with him. He moves in this sort of triangle shape, partly because he's very big, but also because of the cape. The cape does that as well here. The cape adds this sort of triangular shape to things. Obviously things curve and move in certain ways where it's not like a pure triangle shape, but you get the idea of what I mean here. For point at the top, point at the side here, point at the other side here. And that's the sort of way things move, is this sort of triangular shape. But that's sort of the general idea of how I do this sort of thing. If I didn't have reference to work off of, if I was doing it from scratch, I would say, yeah, start from a point, then have everything work out from there to sort of reach its largest point. But its largest point should always be at the end of the frame, more or less, unless you're doing something more small than this. But yeah, for example, if you were to make him a lot smaller on the page, the head would obviously be significantly smaller, and then the foot that would potentially be visible. If his foot was visible about here, it should be very big. It should be about that size, and then his head should be about this size. It should be about yay big. Around the circle I'm sort of tracing with the mouse here, and then around here should be about the size of the foot, maybe bigger. And then obviously things sort of slowly curve back in to the smallest point of the head. But yeah, I think I've maybe gotten a better explanation out of it there, but it's not too different to the sort of half-hearted explanation I gave at the start. But yeah, I'm content to leave it there. This was a fun one. It was challenging to do the base sketch, I'll tell you that for free. Because whenever I was doing this before the video, it made it quite hard to do all that stuff. If memory serves. Because that was a couple of days ago whenever I did these base sketches. Because the thing with the base sketches is, to me at least, it's a better idea to do them in beforehand. Because I'll do them a couple of days beforehand, and then I'll sort of forget about what the actual drawing looked like, and then I'll come back to it a couple of days later to do the art video, at which point I'll make adjustments and changes, and my mind might have changed a little bit about it, so that I might make improvements, changes, all this stuff, which I think generally provides a better final product. So I think that's what I got here, is a better overall final product. Something which I'm a lot happier with in that sense. But yeah, I think I'm content to leave it there. So yeah, I'll say my outro and I'll leave you. So if you like this video, do whatever it is that you'd normally do, with that being liking it or not. I would of course prefer if you liked it, but I can't make you do that, so do whatever it is that you'd normally do. Same deal if you want to subscribe, go for it. I'm not gonna make you, I can't. But you know where the subscribe button is. You can hit it, you can smash it. Do whatever it is that you'd normally do. Gently touch it, smash it, ring the bell, whatever it is that you'd normally do. The button's below the video. You know this already. Anyways, if you have a suggestion for what you'd like to see me draw in the future, you could leave a comment. I'll see it that way. And, you know, be polite about it. I'll still see it regardless, but that will greatly depend. It will greatly influence whether or not I actually choose to do the thing. And if you choose to watch the next video, I'll see you next time. So with all that said, that is us. So I will say goodbye and I will leave you. So, bye-bye.